There's an old joke. It's a guy eating in a restaurant, and when he's done, the waitress comes up and says, "Would you like anything else?" He says, "No thanks, I've had sufficient." Her response was, "You say you went fishing?" He replies, "No, I've had plenty." She says, "Oh, and you caught 20. Frustrated, he says, "Oh, you fool." Her reply, "And you fell in the pool?" Have you ever had a similar experience? You tell somebody something or you give some instructions, and what you later hear or get back is completely different. Ever play the game of telephone? That's where you line up several people and you whisper something into the first person's ear. That person then whispers it into the second person's ear, and so on down the line. At the very end, the person who gets the information last repeats out loud what was whispered in his or her ear. Usually, it's very, very different from what was actually said in the very beginning. Communication is so important. Yet, as these examples show, we often have trouble with it. There are two components of communication. It's the transfer of information from a sender to a receiver, and the understanding of its meaning by the receiver. The latter part is where we usually run into problems. Have you ever had the experience of formulating your response to a person who's talking to you while they're telling you something that's important? Or your mind goes out for a short vacation somewhere while they're talking? How about trying to talk to somebody who's shuffling papers, not even looking at you while you're talking? Is any of this really listening? Probably not. The text identifies 5 components of communication: management of employee behavior in organizations, feedback, emotional sharing, persuasion, information sharing, and it also discusses the process. The sender sends a message and encodes it. This passes through a channel where it may get disrupted by what's called noise, and is received by the receiver and decoded. The key is listening with the intent of understanding. So when someone's talking, stop everything else. Fully listen to him or her with the goal of ensuring you're getting the meaning of what's being conveyed. Make good eye contact with the person so you don't let your mind wander. Watch his or her body language and listen to the way he or she is expressing the information. It can give clues to the meaning that words alone may not convey. And when you're done, paraphrase what the person said to confirm the meaning. If the information being provided is important or relates to a personnel matter, make notes about it after the person leaves. These notes will be helpful later in trying to recall what was said if that becomes necessary. Be aware of the barriers to communication. The text lists several, and so you should be sure to review that section. However, I want to emphasize a few of them right here. Filtering. That's when the sender may manipulate information to make it more favorable to him or herself. Selective perception. The receiver hears things based on his or her own needs and experience. Emotions. Theirs and yours, and what's going on with you right at that time can affect how you provide or how you react to information. And when you're the sender, you also need to be aware of overload. The receiver may shut down and not hear you if there's too much information. Communication is of the utmost importance in all facets of life and work. Think of the times that you wondered what was going on. Gee, what are the bigwigs up to? What's my boss thinking? Ooh, we just lost a big client. I wonder if my job's in jeopardy. There are a lot of rumors. Yes, the grapevine. As you saw in the text, the grapevine actually has some positive aspects to it as well as the rumor mill we think of, but it does have the potential to hurt and upset people. Many times people in an organization are wondering what's happening, and they're often worried about it. When there's silence, that leads to concern. So to the extent possible, be upfront with people and be honest. Share information that you can. If you don't have it, tell the people that you don't have it, but let them know when you think you will and keep them posted. If you don't know about the truth of a rumor, say so, and try to find out, then share that truth if you can. If you tell people that you'll follow up, do it, and let them know what you can when you can. False rumors can be dispelled with truth. Encourage people to come to you with matters of concern. That way you can deal with them or get them information. What about impending layoffs? When a company's about to downsize, that's a tough time. Do you tell people? Well, most companies don't. However, there are some that are upfront. I tend to think you should be upfront. The reason is you can then explore alternatives with people and it doesn't catch them off guard. Also, people can see some of the writing on the wall when work slows down. I remember at one of my employers, lawyers walking into my office saying, I don't have anything to do. I think we may be in trouble. Well, they were, but I wasn't allowed to say anything at that time. And sure enough, we had a layoff not long after that. When you do talk to people ahead of time, it allows you to explore alternatives with them. There are other things that may help so that the downsizing can either be skipped or maybe minimized. For example, people may opt to job share. They could accept furlough days when people rotate taking a day off each week. Some people will even accept a reduced salary because a reduced wage is better than no wage. Some may opt to take early retirement plans if they're offered, and some may volunteer for layoffs if there's a decent severance package. Just be sure you're honest. I've actually had owners who have told people, we won't have layoffs. And then they go back to their office, call a meeting with the executive team, and start talking about who they're going to let go. I had another owner once say that there were not going to be any more layoffs for at least a year right after we'd had a layoff. Well, he did tell the truth, but they started planning for the next one a few months before that, so that when the year was up, I think it was something like a year and a few days after the anniversary of the last layoff, we had another one. Lying, which is one of the barriers to communication, destroys trust and will make it very, very hard to regain it. And then there's email, instant messages, texts, and social media. Once upon a time, communication was face-to-face or over the phone, or at most maybe by memo or letter. But now we have email. Can we ever escape it? Instant messaging. There's also various forms of social media. We now have the opportunity to be at work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, need it or not. Some jobs require that, and it may be essential, but others don't. But people tend to be tethered to those emails and even text messages. Do you check your work email when you're on vacation when you really don't need to? That kind of interferes with your time off and your balance of life. If you don't check it and you get back to work after maybe a week off, how many emails are waiting for you when you return, and how long does it take you to get through them? Probably a day or two. Have you ever been talking with somebody in your office or at your desk and suddenly, bing, you have an instant message. Drop everything now. I need something. Text messages give you the opportunity to be 24/7 too. Hopefully people sending instant messages or texts do have something truly urgent to communicate or get information on. These can be very valuable tools when that's the case, and I don't want to minimize those. But needless to say, if you have something important to say, try to do it face to face. It allows for better dialogue and body language. Facial expressions can be observed. It's just more considerate. There was a movie a few years ago called Up in the Air with George Clooney. It had him traveling around the country firing people. His business hired a new young coworker who convinced him to do this by video conference and cut down on the cost of travel. Well, the people who were laid off or terminated by video conference found that cold, not very effective, and there was a lot of criticism of that. That new coworker got dumped by her boyfriend somewhere along the line, and he did it in the considerate way of sending her a text message that he was breaking up with her. She ultimately quit the job via text. Nice, real nice. Face to face, very important, especially important conversations. Sit down with somebody and talk to them. There's an email etiquette, as you probably know, and our text lists 7 ideas. Well, here are some more. First, the text says, reply within 24 hours. Yes, that's really one of my pet peeves. Have you ever emailed somebody, you're waiting for information, it's important, and they just don't get back to you? I sent somebody an email, I think it was about a month ago. I still haven't heard back from them. It was something that was important to me, but clearly not to that person. I did get the information ultimately from somebody else. When I worked at the law firms, I would send the partners an email asking for information that was important to planning or scheduling. I had 13 partners in one office. I might get 2 of them that would reply, and the rest of them I'd have to go around door to door to find out the information. So respond to emails. It's courtesy, and it may be important. It may be okay to be informal in your emails, but don't get sloppy. Usually these are business communications. Try to keep your messages brief and to the point. And on that same subject, summarize long discussions. Have you ever forwarded chains of email to somebody? Write FYI at the top? Well, going through pages of replies to understand a discussion is annoying and time-consuming. Be sure, when you're doing it, to put a little brief discussion in there that summarizes what's being said in those emails. Maybe you don't even have to send the emails, you can just send that story. Be sure that you're not forwarding something when you do forward email chains, something that's confidential. There may be something in there that maybe not everybody should be seeing. And don't change anything in other people's emails that you're forwarding. Those are their emails, and it's not your right to be able to change those. And if you're forwarding an email that's sent only to you, make sure you get the author's okay before you forward it to somebody else. Be sure to use proper sentence case. Using all caps sounds like you're shouting at somebody. When you use all lowercase, it just looks like you're lazy or perhaps not that well educated. Use the blind copy and courtesy copy appropriately. can seem dishonest if you're blind copying somebody who you should be CCing. Don't use email as an excuse to avoid personal contact. We've already talked about that, but it's important. And remember that email isn't private, and most often it's recoverable even if you think you've deleted it. People have been fired for using email inappropriately. Be sparing with your group emails. Be aware of that reply all. It can drive everybody else who's on that email who really doesn't need to know about it nuts. Use the subject field to indicate content and purpose. And don't send chain letters, virus warnings, or junk emails. If you think that you're getting too many chain letters or jokes from somebody, tell the sender. Ask them to stop it. Remember that your tone can't be heard in email, so be very careful in how you phrase things. I personally take probably far too much time trying to craft emails if I'm dealing with something important because I don't want to give the wrong message in that email. I want people to understand my meaning as best as I can convey it. And of course, use a signature that includes your contact information so they don't have to look it up if they want to get in touch with you. As to social media, be careful what you post. Don't disparage the company, co-workers, customers. We had a case assistant, which was sort of like a junior paralegal at one of my law firms. She seemed like she wasn't that happy, wasn't doing that well. She suddenly disappeared from work for 2 or 3 days. On the second day, I contacted her to try to find out what was going on. Just got her voicemail, left a message asking her to get in touch with me. Didn't hear anything. On the third day, I was told that somebody had found on her social media website a posting that she put, which basically disparaged the company and talked very poorly about her bosses and her secretary, and didn't use the nicest of terms in doing so. Well, another case assistant discovered this, and he was kind enough to print this out and distribute it to most of the people who were mentioned in her posting on social media. Needless to say, it was not going to be a pleasant environment for her when she returned. Well, she did come back, and I just went in and talked to her and told her what had happened. By the way, I wasn't very happy with that case assistant who disseminated that information either, and we had a conversation about that. The person did resign, but this was just a very poor example of bad judgment. Be careful when you're posting something that you're not doing anything that's harassing or discriminatory. Many companies now have social media policies that cover many of these matters, so be sure when you're working somewhere that you're aware of what those policies are and that you comply with them. So in conclusion, communication is one of the most important elements in organizations and really in life. Poor or non-communication can have negative results. Remember, communication is the transfer of information from a sender to a receiver and the understanding of its meaning by the receiver. So ensure you're listening with the intent of good understanding and that you're avoiding the barriers to good communication. Otherwise, somebody may say to you, "You say you went fishing?"